I think the war is the most important intersection in the country's history. We talk about how the war redefined us. We were a fledgling country. We were this experiment was just slowly beginning to mature, but with slavery on the table, and the country split geographically, expansion of slavery into the territories, it just became an untenable situation. And that's key. The Civil War didn't happen in a vacuum, and I think it's important to tell people about who we were and what we did and what emerged after the war. People are seeking many different things when they come here. I mean, some people just have a pretty baseline interest in old homes and the antebellum era, and there's that, although I think that's lessening. There are some people who are really into the Civil War. They might not even take a house tour, they might take a battlefield tour, but more and more, we're seeing younger people, really a couple of generations, who truly are interested in a fuller story. They want to know how this happened. They're not afraid of talking about slavery. They're also not terribly interested in demonizing, one group and, then raising another up. And they want to know. But they also want to know why there was a war. They want to know about the war or the Battle of Franklin. But more and more, they want to know about what happened afterwards. And that's probably the greatest challenge, I think, to any site like this, is to talk about what happened afterwards, because the country was saved, preserved, and slavery was extinguished, but nothing else. And we worked and fought and opposed and struggled bitterly at times for decades and generations. That goes right up to the modern era. So you can go from Civil War to civil rights if you want to. And I think more and more people, they want to. They want to know why. My experience being in this field now for almost 20 years is I've been in it long enough to see a generational shift. And more people are less interested in just the decor or the beauty of a place or the sort of romantic image, not just of the Old South, but of the United States, of America. And they want some truth in a world of spinning disinformation and accusations and finger pointing. Oh gosh, the Battle of Franklin for me was just it when it came to the Civil War. And that's why I started traveling here. And I think it's chiefly important for two reasons. First, it happened toward the end of the war. So it was easily forgotten by the more contemporary world because it seemed like, the war was already decided. Well, it wasn't. And what happened here, right here, the house was filled with wounded. There were the suffering around here and toward Carter House was immense. What made this battle important was it's a violent kind of spasm toward the end. When you would think that it might be subsiding, this is all after Shiloh and Vicksburg and Gettysburg and Chickamauga and Murfreesboro and Chattanooga. Just on and on and on. It's a long list. And when these two sides got locked together, everybody knew what was at stake. Everybody knew what was at stake on November 30th, 1864. The soldiers on each side knew full well the world they lived in, and they were perfectly willing to kill one another in droves to get to a final conclusion. And that made it important because I always wanted to look through the romance and get right down to, why do human beings do this? We weren't any different than anybody else, but we had to fight this war. And to me, that was it, because Franklin does give some finality to things, because a couple of weeks later, what's left of the Confederate Army is just picked apart. And by the spring, the war then just stops. It finally ends, like these great wars often do, because one side has to be beaten down into the ground. And that's a story that I know through the years has really connected with people, because this isn't early. There's no innocence and naivety here. It's not the midpoint, when the war seemed to turn. This was the final. It's like the last scenes of an epic movie or chapter of a book, when you can't believe what you're seeing. You can't believe what you're reading. You can't believe that this is happening. That's why Franklin's important. what has happened in Franklin, but also Williamson County and even Murray County and Spring Hill, is a modern miracle. I mean, this was almost completely not just forgotten, but covered up. And I think that led to, a lot of myths and misconceptions, and, the battle wasn't terribly important. And so a few of us, we were pretty crazy, years ago, and we're like, no, we should try and save this ground. And so, over the course of 20 years, we've preserved, just in Franklin, probably north of 175 acres, but it's all been worth it, because now there isn't just a house to see, there's a battlefield, there's an experience, there's this place that someone who's never been before can go to, and I don't believe in ghosts, but you can feel it. You can, and I think it's like so many other places of great importance in the history of this country. If you allow it, you can feel the past talk to you, and that's been wonderful. What's happened, again, generationally, is I think people are now fully embracing the idea that Franklin isn't just a historic community. Franklin is one of only about 25 or 30 places in the entire country where a titanic battle of the American Civil War unfolded, and where the intersection of what was the United States and slavery and our future came crashing together right here on the ground south of town, and then in the square. And it's been an honor to be part of it, to think about what happened here, to really think about what happened here, and to think about who we were, and ultimately how close we came to destroying ourselves. And that if the war had turned out differently, not only does slavery continue for God knows how long, but the United States is bifurcated, it's broken, it's severed, and then it just becomes, as President Lincoln said, anarchy. If you could just secede and do whatever you want, there is no union, there is no country. And I know that it has great imperfections, but it's still the greatest country, I think. It's the greatest experiment in liberty and justice that has ever occurred. There's a reason people still want to come here. That beacon it shines just bright enough that people still do want to come here. And I think many times those of us who lived here a long time take it for granted, and we look around and we see all the problems, and there have been many blessings. But I think the blessings began anew in 1865 with a new start.